In spring 2025, Ford Motor Company stunned the business world by suspending its financial guidance for the year. The move signaled deep uncertainty. Ford could no longer predict its own future. The cause, a sudden 25% tariff on imported auto parts, imposed by the Trump administration. Ford's global supply chain was thrown into chaos overnight, making its financial plans obsolete. Wall Street panicked, Ford's stock tumbled, and Americans wondered if car prices and jobs were at risk. This wasn't just a corporate issue, it was a warning that the trade war had arrived on Main Street. Ford's decision marked the start of a high-stakes battle that would test the company's resilience and the future of American manufacturing. The new tariffs were simple in theory but devastating in practice. Overnight, the rules of the game changed for automakers, suppliers, and workers across the country. What seemed like a straightforward policy quickly became a tangled web of consequences, rippling through every corner of the industry. A 25% tax on imported vehicles and parts was meant to force automakers to build in the U.S., a bold move designed to bring jobs back home and protect American manufacturing. The government hoped that by making foreign cars and components more expensive, companies would have no choice but to shift production stateside. But the auto industry's supply chains are global, not national. Decades of innovation and efficiency had created a system where parts and vehicles crisscrossed borders seamlessly, allowing companies to source the best materials and expertise from around the world. A single car contains thousands of parts from dozens of countries, crossing borders multiple times before reaching the showroom floor. From German transmissions to Japanese electronics and Mexican steel, every vehicle is a patchwork of international collaboration. The tariffs ignored this reality, causing confusion and halting investments. Companies scrambled to understand the new rules while projects were put on hold and expansion plans shelved. Uncertainty spread, leaving executives and workers alike wondering what the future would hold. Ford faced a tough choice: absorb costs, raise prices, or fight back. Each option carried risks. Higher prices could drive away customers, while absorbing costs would eat into profits and threaten jobs. The company was caught between political pressure and economic reality. The company's public warnings drew fire from President Trump, turning a business crisis into a political feud. Ford's leadership found itself in the national spotlight as the debate over tariffs became a symbol of the broader struggle between government policy and corporate strategy. Ford, long a symbol of American industry, was suddenly cast as an adversary. The company's legacy and reputation were at stake as it tried to navigate a rapidly changing landscape while staying true to its roots. The tariff shockwave was the opening shot in a trade war that would reshape the industry, forcing companies, workers, and governments to rethink their roles in a new era of global competition and uncertainty. Ford found itself at a crossroads, facing unprecedented challenges that threatened its very existence. In response, the company crafted a bold, two-pronged survival strategy, one that would test its resilience and ingenuity like never before. Behind the scenes, Ford's logistics teams worked around the clock, rerouting critical parts through Canada to sidestep new tariffs. This complex operation required coordination across borders and departments, but the payoff was enormous. By avoiding the steepest fees, Ford managed to save up to $1 billion, keeping its assembly lines moving and its workforce employed. But the cost-cutting didn't stop there. Ford made the tough call to cancel a major electric vehicle project, a move that sent shockwaves through the industry. The company also slashed another $1 billion from its budget, leading to painful layoffs and the shuttering of some facilities. These sacrifices were necessary to keep the company afloat during turbulent times. On the public front, Ford launched a sweeping, patriotic marketing blitz. The message was clear: employee pricing for all, and a renewed emphasis that 80% of its U.S. sales were built right here in America. The campaign aimed to rally both customers and employees, tapping into a sense of national pride and unity. The results were immediate: showrooms filled with eager buyers, and sales jumped 16% in April alone. It was a much-needed boost, but Ford's leadership knew the fight was far from over. The company was still under immense pressure, and the road ahead remained uncertain. CEO Jim Farley became the public face of Ford's struggle, appearing on television and at press conferences to make the company's case. He warned that the new tariffs would not only hurt Ford's bottom line but also threaten American jobs and make cars less affordable for everyday families. Farley didn't just speak to the media, he took the fight directly to lawmakers, calling for exemptions on critical parts and urging a more practical, balanced approach to trade policy. He argued that protecting American industry required more than slogans. It demanded smart, targeted solutions. Ford's campaign began to shift the conversation. It wasn't just about waving the flag, it was about economic survival, protecting livelihoods, and ensuring the company's future in a rapidly changing world. As Ford waged this two-front battle, fighting for financial stability and political support, the stakes couldn't have been higher. The company was no longer just defending its profits, it was fighting for its very future, determined to emerge stronger from the crisis. The financial toll was immediate and severe. Tariffs added $2.5 billion in costs for Ford in 2025. Even after mitigation, the net hit was $1.5 billion. First quarter revenue dropped 5%, profits were cut in half, and Wall Street's fears were confirmed. Ford's stock fell nearly 19% over the year, and uncertainty made future investments risky. The threat of layoffs loomed, and higher costs meant higher car prices for consumers. Ford's temporary discounts couldn't last. The long-term reality was clear. The policy meant to help American workers risked making cars unaffordable for many. The trade war's impact was now felt in paychecks and showrooms across the country. The tariffs sparked outrage in Canada, where the auto industry is deeply linked to the U.S. Canadian leaders, furious at what they saw as an attack on their economy, retaliated swiftly. Ontario imposed a 25% export tax on electricity to the U.S. and pulled American liquor from store shelves. Prime Minister Trudeau called the tariffs dumb, escalating the dispute into a diplomatic crisis. The seamless North American supply chain began to break down, with border delays and rising costs. The trade war threatened jobs and businesses on both sides of the border. Canada's response showed that protectionist policies triggered chain reactions, harming everyone involved. The conflict was no longer just economic, it was a full-blown international standoff. Ford wasn't alone. Every U.S. automaker was hit hard. The industry faced $100 billion in new costs, threatening jobs and the survival of multiple companies. GM braced for a $4.5 billion impact, while Stellantis paused production and laid off workers. Sales forecasts for 2025 were slashed by 500,000 vehicles. Higher prices and shrinking demand meant families delayed or abandoned new car purchases. The tariffs, meant to boost the economy, were now shrinking it. The crisis exposed how vulnerable modern manufacturing is to political shocks. Ford's struggle was just one part of a much larger, industry-wide reckoning. The 2025 tariff crisis revealed the fragility of global supply chains, exposing just how interconnected and vulnerable the American auto industry had become. As new tariffs were imposed almost overnight, the flow of critical parts and materials ground to a halt, leaving manufacturers scrambling to adapt. The dangers of blunt protectionism became painfully clear. Factories that once buzzed with activity fell silent, and workers who depended on steady paychecks found themselves facing an uncertain future. Instead of creating jobs, tariffs led to layoffs, production halts, and higher costs for both companies and consumers. The promise of economic revival quickly faded as dealerships struggled to move vehicles and families postponed new car purchases. Ford's fight became a case study in corporate crisis management, as executives raced to find solutions, cut losses, and reassure anxious employees and investors. The company's every move was scrutinized both in the boardroom and on the factory floor. In this new reality, business and politics became inseparable. Lobbyists and executives crowded the halls of power, seeking relief and clarity, while politicians weighed the costs of their decisions against mounting public frustration. The conflict with Canada showed how quickly trade disputes can damage decades of cooperation. What once seemed like an unbreakable partnership was suddenly at risk, as cross-border supply chains unraveled and trust eroded. The North American auto sector, once a model of free trade and collaboration, now stood as a cautionary tale for industries everywhere. The intricate web of shared manufacturing, labor, and innovation was threatened by short-term thinking. As plants closed and uncertainty spread, the human cost became impossible to ignore. Families worried about their livelihoods, and entire communities felt the ripple effects of lost jobs and shuttered factories. By year's end, the tariffs had failed to strengthen the industry. Costs were up, sales were down, and uncertainty reigned. The hoped-for resurgence never materialized, replaced instead by anxiety and doubt. The lesson was clear. Complex problems need strategic solutions, not simple slogans or quick fixes. Real progress demands collaboration, foresight, and a willingness to adapt to a changing world. For American automakers, the future remains uncertain, full of both risk and opportunity. The choices made today will shape the industry for years to come, but the lessons of 2025 won't be forgotten. They serve as a stark reminder that resilience, innovation, and cooperation are more important than ever in securing the future of American auto manufacturing.